The Thought You Setter's Cure. Mr. Burbank absently reached from behind his newspaper for the sugar bowl. His groping fingers hit the toast, the honeycomb, the salt cellar, and finally found the sugar bowl. His children, Darcy, Allison, and Bard, nudged each other and laughed. Every morning Daddy felt around on the table for the sugar while he read bad news in the newspaper. One morning the news was so bad and he was so absent-minded he put currant jelly in his coffee. The children were anxious for a repeat performance and hopefully pushed everything but the sugar in the path of his searching hand. This morning, as soon as Mr. Burbank had found the sugar, he let the paper down with a bang. "The sugar bowl's empty," he said, in an aggrieved, hurt way. Mrs. Burbank, who was buttering toast, said, "Darcy, run out to the kitchen and fill the sugar bowl, dear. The sugar's in the big red can." Darcy obediently got up, took the sugar bowl, and went out to the kitchen. After a long time, he came back to the breakfast table with a plate of cinnamon rolls. "What are these for?" his father said. "And where is the sugar?" "Sugar?" said Darcy. "What about sugar?" "I told you to fill the sugar bowl," said Mrs. Burbank. "Oh," said Darcy, "I thought you said, 'Get the cinnamon roll.'" All three children looked at each other and laughed loudly. Finally, Mr. and Mrs. Burbank laughed too. Darcy went out and filled the sugar bowl, and Mr. Burbank, after 3 cups of coffee, missed his bus and decided to walk as far as the school with the children. Just as they were going out the front door, Allison remembered her arithmetic book and dashed upstairs for it. In a minute she leaned over the banister and called, "Mother, did you see my arithmetic book?" Mrs. Burbank said, "What does it look like?" Allison said, "It's blue and not very thick." Mrs. Burbank said, "I think it's on the table in the hall." Allison said, "How did it get out there?" Mrs. Burbank said, "Out where? I said it's on the table in the hall." Allison said, "Oh, I thought you said it's out in the stable in a stall." All three children roared with laughter. Allison found her arithmetic book, and they all left the house laughing and repeating, "Out in the stable in a stall." Mr. Burbank said, come on, we haven't all day." He walked briskly along the street, his footsteps ringing loudly and purposefully in the thin autumn air. The children giggled and jostled along behind him, their progress so uneven and broken by "thought you said" and shrieks of laughter that Mr. Burbank reached the corner first, in fact, almost before they had left the yard. He stopped to wait for them and to survey the city spread out below him in the morning sunshine. He was glad he lived on a hill. He was glad he was alive, and he was glad he had a little boy 9, a little girl 7, and a little boy 6. When the children had caught up with him, he said, "Look, children, see how beautiful the city looks from up here. Watch the fog rise over there." "Where's the dog?" said Bard. "What dog?" asked Darcy. "What color are the dog's eyes?" asked Allison. "What on earth are you talking about?" said Mr. Burbank. "I said watch the fog rise over there." "Oh," Bard said, "I thought you said watch the dog's eyes glare." All the children laughed and laughed. Mr. Burbank said, "What nonsense!" But it was a beautiful morning, so he laughed with his light-hearted children. When they were halfway down the next block, the children suddenly stopped stock still in front of a pretty white house and yelled in unison, "Marilyn, Marilyn, come on, we'll be late." Mr. Burbank said, "That's no way to do it. If you want Marilyn, go to the door and ask for her." The children looked surprised, but went obediently up to the door and rang the bell. Marilyn's mother opened the door and said something to the children which seemed to send them into convulsions of mirth. Doubled over with laughter and holding their sides, they came down the walk to their father. "Now what's so funny?" Mr. Burbank asked. Darcy said, Marilyn's mother said Marilyn fell in the toaster and is burnt up dead. Mr. Burbank said, what did Marilyn's mother really say, and why isn't Marilyn going to school? Allison said, she said Marilyn fell in her coaster and hurt her head, and Darcy thought she said Marilyn fell in the toaster and is burnt up dead. She went into another paroxysm of laughter. Mr. Burbank didn't laugh. Instead, he bent down and examined Darcy's ears, which were large and pink and soft and quite clean. They should work, said Mr. Burbank, looking at the other children's ears. They all seemed quite normal. The children wanted to know what he was doing. Bard said, what are you doing that for, Daddy? Mr. Burbank said, I'm trying to decide whether I should get you an ear trumpet. Beer crumpet. What's that? Bard said. The other children repeated after him, beer crumpet, beer crumpet. They all laughed, but Mr. Burbank, who had had enough. He said, come on, I'll supervise a race to school. On your marks, get set, go. When Mr. Burbank reached his office, the very first thing he did was to call Mrs. Burbank. He said, Mary, have our children ever had scarlet fever? She said, now you know they haven't, Bernard. Well, he said, have they ever had ear infections? Goodness, no, said Mrs. Burbank. They've never had anything. They are the healthiest children in the neighborhood. What's the matter? Mr. Burbank said, plenty. They can't any of them hear well. I told them to look at the fog rise, and they thought I was talking about dog's eyes. Marilyn's mother said that Marilyn fell off her coaster and hurt her head, and they thought she said Marilyn fell in the toaster and was burnt up dead. Mrs. Burbank finished for him. Bernard, did you ever hear of anyone falling in a toaster? Of course not. There is nothing wrong with our children's ears. It is just that they are going through that awful thought you said phase. Well, let's get them out of it, said Mr. Burbank. They sound like dopes. Dog eyes, indeed. Mrs. Burbank said, don't worry, dear. I'll take care of it. As soon as she finished talking to Mr. Burbank, Mrs. Burbank called Marilyn's mother to find out about Marilyn, if she was badly hurt and if there was anything she could do. Marilyn's mother said Marilyn was just fine, but the doctor thought she should be quiet for a day or two. When Mrs. Burbank asked Marilyn's mother if she had ever had any trouble with thought you said, and told about the sugar bowl and the cinnamon rolls, the arithmetic book and the stable and the stall, about Marilyn's fall in the toaster and the dog's eyes, Marilyn's mother said, oh, Mrs. Burbank, I'm so glad you called and told me all this. You see, Marilyn has been doing the same thing all morning, and I was terribly afraid that the blow on her head had affected her mind. When I asked her if she wanted crumpets or toast, she said, bumped on the nose, who? When I asked her if her head pained her, she said, I thought you said, is the bed painted yet? Mrs. Burbank said, I'm going to call up Mrs. Teagle and see if Terry or Teresa are thought you saids. She is such a good manager that if they have thought you said itis, she's probably thought of a cure. Marilyn's mother asked Mrs. Burbank to call her back if she got any useful information, and they said goodbye.